we can start this afternoon session. So we're delighted to have Tainara Ayeli de Lima. So Tainara will speak about PVS, but just to mention a little element of biography. So you did your PhD thesis here with Mauricio, and you told me about combinatorics of permutations, yes? So, I mean, we're very happy to listen to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. So today we're going to present our developments in algebraic theorems in the verification system. Well, this is a joint work with Bruno Berto de Oliveira. Bruno is a student at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Brasília. Maurício Ayala Rincon, Maurício is here. So Maurício is the supervisor of Bruno. Andrea Borges Avelar. Andrea is also from Universidade de Brasília. And André Luiz Galdino, who is from Universidade Federal de Catalão in Brazil. So this is the talk's plan, but I will skip it. So first of all, the motivation. Currently, the group of formal methods from NASA is the main maintainer of the main PVS library we have available. So in this link, we have a link to the algebra library. So here we have a collection of several theories about different topics, about Boolean rings, about groups, about Euclidean rings, about fields. This is a huge theory. I want to show you the dependence tree here. It's a bit crazy, dependence tree. Yeah, so sorry. Okay. And another thing I would like to show is that if you look at the oldest theories here, this one, for example, from about 10 years ago. So the oldest theories in PVS, they have only definitions and basic results about algebraic structures. For example, in this one we have things like an abelian group, subtype of group, or a lemma saying that if you have an abelian group A and S is a subgroup of A, so S is itself an abelian group, and things like this. So considering the lack of more complex developments in abstract algebra, so this is one of the reasons that we started this work to enrich the PVS NASA library and contribute with the community of PVS, the PVS community. And also because although in theory fields, these structures, we know they are in the basis of knowledge, but they have a great potential for applications, and in order to verify these more complex applications, we have to verify the basis. So because of that, we started this work enriching the PVS library. So I will talk about I will give you some examples of our developments. So first of all, I see things like the first steps were in the way to define ideals, quotient rings, and isomorphism theorems for rings. In this light blue box, we have our developments that depend on previous theories in PVS in these dark blue boxes. And after we formalize things like about maximal ideals, about principal and prime ideals, and all those formalizations allowed us to formalize landmark results. I would like to highlight the Chinese remainder theorem for rings. Yes. So the version, yes, James commented about Chinese remainder theorem. The version for integers, it's very it's well known. So yes. So only to give for integers. and for hints. So for integers, this version is very it's well known. We have a positive integer m, which can be decomposed in a product of r integers, where these integers, they are relative prime. And under these conditions, so we can say, okay, an element that belongs to Z modulo M, well, although this element wear a different cloth, but this element has the same essence, the same soul as an element of this set. So these two structures, they are isomorphic. For the case of hint, so we consider ideals of a hint R under the condition that we call it a maximality condition. And under these conditions, we can prove that the quotient hint R by the intersection of this hint is isomorphic to this Cartesian product. So here, from this general approach, we can prove, for example, that, okay, if we consider Mi and Mg relatively prime, we can prove that, this is hint, okay, the same. We can prove that Mi and Mz and Mjz, they satisfy this condition, and then you can prove directly the Chinese remainder theorem for Z using this general result. Okay. So this is the first example of this approach. So our approach is, well, we formalize hints in a generical way, and instantiating with adequate parameters, we can infer the theorems for concrete structures. So this work was published in the Journal of Automated Reasoning, and I will give you another two examples of this approach and talk more about our theory. So the second example is about the GCD algorithm for Euclidean domains. So again, I try to use it. Okay. So we know the GCD for integers, for example, if you consider a number A and a number B. So we know that the Euclid's division lemma holds. So we can write A as a quotient times B plus a reminder. This reminder is here. Oh, sorry. It's here. And because we have a property that the GCD, the greatest common divisor between A and B, is equal to the greatest common divisor between E and R. So from this property, we can apply it several times, and for example, update B as 5 and R as B. We write this, and again, and write this, and when we reach 0 for R, so this element is the greatest common divisor between A and B. So we can what we did was extend this idea for a genetic structure of Euclidean domains. So we prove a GCD algorithm for Euclidean domains, and from this genetic algorithm we infer the correctness of the algorithm for integers, but also for the Gaussian integers. So only to define things. So what a Euclidean domain is? So R is an Euclidean domain if R is a commutative ring, and if holds a property, the Euclid's division lemma holds in this structure. So what I mean is there exists Q and R in R. In that way that R is equal to QB plus R, and this R is 0, or R is different from 0. I'm sorry, I forgot one important thing. This structure is equipped with a function which is a norm. Yeah, so this norm of the remainder is less than the norm of B. Yeah, and an Euclidean domain is an Euclidean ring where and also an integral domain, which means that if you take two different elements different from 0, so the product is also different from 0. So a Euclidean ring is a commutative ring equipped with a function, a norm over natural numbers, that maps in the natural number, sorry, and where the Euclid's division lemma holds, basically. And these two relations, Euclid pair and Euclid Phi, we defined it, we specified it only to facilitate our formalization about the GCD algorithm for Euclidean integral domains. So we say that this pair R and Phi is an Euclidean pair if R is an Euclidean ring and Phi works like the norm. And we have also this relation, Euclidean F-Phi, so we take R and Phi, an Euclidean pair, and we say, oh, F-Phi, which is a function that takes two elements in R, A and B, and returns two elements in R, which are the quotient and remainder. And so the first component of F-Phi is this quotient, and the second one is the remainder. So if F-Phi satisfies all the properties regarding Euclidean rings and that we considered for norm, so we have here an Euclidean F-Phi. So we use these elements to provide our Euclidean GCD algorithm as a recursive function. So we consider an Euclidean domain, a norm, a function F-Phi, and this is recursively defined in this way. Okay, if A is 0, so the GCD is B. Okay, see the norm of A is greater than or equal to the norm of B, so consider the remainder, the second component of F-Phi. If the second component is 0, so the GCD is B. Otherwise, so compute the Euclidean GCD algorithm for B. So we update as A as B and B as the remainder. And if this condition doesn't hold, then swap B and A. When we provide a measure in PVS, a recursive function, we have to provide a measure. In this way, we consider lexicographic measure given by the norm of B and the norm of A. And I think Paulo said it. PVS generates proof obligations to check types and to check, in this case, termination of recursive functions. So to exemplify, one proof obligation we have is this PCC associated to this function to prove that, in fact, this measure decrease when we actualize A as B and, A as B and B as the remainder. Okay?
Sorry, just to clarify, the phi is a function, it's a norm, yes?
Yeah, it's a norm, it's like a norm, yes.
So how do you define it in these cases? Yes, just to be sure. Yes. I mean,
so the function phi?
Yeah. I mean, you need something to decrease for your Euclidean.
The norm is the lexicograph norm.
Yes.
And because this phi satisfies these conditions here.
So I mean that means you equip, it's a kind of grading, yes?
We are considering here.
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
Because you introduced it here for Euclidean rings. Yes.
Over Euclidean rings, we have to provide a function.
Yes.
And this function has to satisfy this condition. So because of that, we have the decrease.
So this is your but then you need to instantiate it.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So you have to find adequate F phi and phi.
Yes.
That phi.
And that's where you use lexicographic, and you also need to prove it's terminating.
Yes.
And then you have a library for termination of lexicographic.
In this case, PVS can prove it automatically because the measure is not so complicated.
Okay.
The method is abstract at this point.
Yes.
And when you verify the correctness of the Euclidean yesterday algorithm, you only have the properties of the method over an Euclidean domain.
Yes.
An abstract Euclidean domain.
Yes.
At this point.
Yes. But no, it's just that the termination is not indicated in the definition of Euclidean. Yes? I'm correct?
But
I mean, there is nothing like, I mean, it doesnn't speak about termination.
No, yes, but you have this.
It's like a grading.
But we can
exactly.
for this condition. Yeah.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, so, we defined this function, and now what we want to do is prove that, in fact, what this function computes is the GCD. So we specified GCD given an R, which is a commutative ring here, and a set X of elements of R. So we specified GCD as a Boolean. So D is the GCD of the elements of X if D divides all the elements of X, and also if you have a C that divides the elements of X, so C have to divide D. Yeah? And this Euclid theorem, this Euclid theorem is the theorem I put here for integers that guarantee that, the GCD between two elements, or G is the GCD between A and B, if and only if G is the GCD between B and the remainder that we have for because R is an Euclidean domain. So from this Euclid theorem and by an inductive argument over the lexicographic measure, we can prove that, in fact, the Euclidean GCD algorithm for A and B computes the GCD between A and B. So, the nice thing...
So that induction is done automatically, or do you have to...
We have to prove. Yes, this induction is not automatic.
So, for a non-expert question, for someone who's not so familiar with PVS, is this the typical style that one phrases something logically and then you postulate a Skolem function which will fulfill that specification, and then show it exists, and essentially chain those Skolem functions together.
You were talking
Well,
about...
Fi is somehow a Skolemization of this property of being a Euclidean Fi, and it's a parameter to this algorithm, and then you will supply it together with a proof that it meets its specification. So all the way along there is this sort of play between function specification and relational specification. Is that typical in PVS?
It's a way that we choose to do it, but not necessarily it's a typical way.
No,
to
okay.
do it in
Well, that's interesting.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So the nice thing is that now we have a kind of mechanism to prove the correctness of Euclidean GCD algorithm for other structures. Because, for example, if you prove that the ring of integers is an Euclidean domain, and if you consider, if you give a function phi, in this case as the absolute value of this number, and if you consider this function f phi, which returns, remember, the quotient and the remainder of the division of A, in this case of I by J. If we prove that f phi is in fact an Euclidean f phi, so we are done to infer the Euclidean GCD algorithm for this structure. So for integers, for example, we consider phi as the absolute value, as I said, and div and ren, they are also in the native library of PVS, the prelude file. So we use it from the native library of PVS. Well, not only for the standard case that we already know, but also, for example, for the Gaussian integers. So the Gaussian integers, they are complex numbers restricted to integers numbers. So the real part and the pure part, the imaginary part, they are integers numbers. So we have to prove that, in fact, these structures with the sum and multiplication of complex numbers, they form an integral domain. The function phi, which is the norm, is the natural to consider the element multiplied by its conjugate. So this is a property of this function phi. This is not important for us. And now we have to provide that function f phi that computes the Q and the R. Yeah. So we do it for.
Maybe you can use. No. Sorry.
I have already used. There's a trick here, a nice trick here, because first of all, we prove this lemma div-hem approx that says to us basically that if you consider integers n and b is different from 0, there. So we can prove that it holds where the absolute value of R is greater than the absolute value of P divided by 2. Okay, so basically this is this lemma div-hen approx, and these numbers are integers. So we can consider now a Gaussian integer and an x, which is a positive integer, and use this result.
Maybe I'm not sure. Can you see the computation? I mean, you're just behind the computer. So.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. It's just.
No, thank you very much.
Maybe remove the computer. No, better. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, thank you very much. So you can. So if you consider y here and x, an integer positive number. So using this result, you can say, oh, the degree of r is equal to q1 plus x times x, plus reminder satisfying this condition. The same for the imaginary part. And we can consider so Q as Q1 plus Q2 times Y, and the remainder R as, I'm sorry.
Go, Karen.
And considering these things, we can check easily that the norm of R is less than x squared. Okay. So we do these are.
Just to understand. So you take an element, this which is Gaussian integer, and you're trying
this
to.
Is a Gaussian integer.
Yes. So before it was an integer. Yes. Before you had an integer, like
yes,
and you were able to divide it with a remainder.
Yes.
And here you divide it in some way, or?
We divide it
by Q1, Q2, or something like
that. But in the way that this remainder has a modulus
okay.
less than equal to the absolute value of v divided by 2.
Okay.
To guarantee this
thing. Okay.
Here when we consider more general case.
Okay.
But in this case, x is an integer. And
yes.
we can prove from this that y, this Gaussian integer, is q, this q, plus x plus r. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing is, okay, now we have to extend this analysis when x is a Gaussian integer. So.
Oh, sorry.
So we want to write y as q times x plus r. Well, if we multiply it by the conjugate of x here, we have this thing, and now this is yes the norm of x plus 0y. Yes, and we can use this argument to obtain this q, and then you can use this q to obtain this remainder as y minus qx. Okay. So this is the idea of the construction of this Fv. So the q is like this, and the remainder is like this. Okay.
So So I mean, in the usual algorithm, you ask that they have the same greatest common divisor. Yes, it's and then by induction you get the greatest. Yes.
The greatest because we are.
And here you also have something like this. No.
So here we are providing the functions
Okay.
phi and fphi
Yes.
to instantiate the generical case.
Yes.
Using these particular functions appropriate to this.
But so you will start with, just to be clear, so you start with one Gaussian integer or two Gaussian integers, your computation. You start, so in the case of a Euclid algorithm, you start with two natural numbers. Yes?
Yes.
And here you start with two Gaussian integers, or one.
Two.
And you're looking for some kind of BCD, yes?
Yes.
Notice that the definition of yesterday is for sets.
Yes.
Not for.
No, but then you're going into something. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, it was not totally clear. Anna.
No, it's nice.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, here.
X and Y.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And we consider the functions phi and fphi.
Okay, perfect. This.
So this is another example for approach. So we formalized the Euclidean algorithm for Euclidean domains and use this GL version to provide the correctness of the concrete version we know. Okay, the third example is about quaternions. This is a work that we will present in interactive theorem proving of this year. Okay, so we know that complex numbers can model the bidimensional real space. So we can consider vector z as a complex number. Here we have the usual sum and multiplication for complex numbers. And if we consider complex number which has the norm equal to 1s, it means that we can write W as cosine of theta and sin of theta. So the result of multiplying z by W represents the rotation of this vector in the unclockwise direction by an angle of theta. Well, so for about 10 years, Sir William Hamilton tried to model the three-dimensional space with a structure like complex numbers, equipped with addition and multiplication. And on October 16th of 1843, he realized that he needed a structure containing not only 3 dimensions, but 4 dimensions, and it provides some special peculiar results. One peculiar result was the advent of a structure called Hamilton's quaternions, which is in the intersection of many mathematical topics, such as non-computative ring theory, number theory, geometrical topology. And other peculiar result was the most famous act of mathematical vandalism that we have ever seen, because Hamilton got so excited that he carved in the Broom Bridge in Dublin the inscriptions that talk about the identities to build quaternions. So I want to give some information. So we have this structure that we can identify with quadruples of real numbers, operations that can be defined like this: constants 1, a, j, and k, and the identities that we already know. Yeah. So we can identify the quaternions with the vector space of coordination when we consider this part key 0, the real part as 0. So we can identify this structure with the three-dimensional space. As in complex numbers, we can define the conjugate, we can define norm, and we can consider the set of quaternions which has norm 1. And the nice thing, one nice thing about quaternions, Hamilton's quaternions, is we can define a function from H0, a quaternion which the real part is 0, and associate this number with, this quaternion with this product, Q be the conjugate of Q. And one thing we can prove is, okay, in fact, this multiplication belongs to H0. So the real part is 0. Another interesting, you can prove that this function is a linear function. When this Q has norm 1, so this function preserves the norm of the vector. And when the quaternion has norm 1, so this function preserves the x generated by the conjugate, the pure part. So these properties are blinking to us. This is a rotation, yeah. Yeah, so, well, the usual way to make rotations in the three-dimensional space, the usual way is by considering the Euler matrices, where we can compound 3 rotations around x, y, and z. But there are some problems with this approach. One of them is where we are multiplying 3 matrices. Problems considering quaternions, because here we are multiplying quaternions that has real entries. And another problem that we have with this Euler matrix when we rotate using Euler matrix is the gimbal log, which is, okay, if we take specific angles, so we can collapse the axis and stay in a plane. So you lost a degree of freedom. So, and we can avoid it using quaternions. So quaternions are very good to make rotations in the three-dimensional space. And what about formalization of quaternions? So we have some formalizations in the literature. So, for example, our colleague Marco Maghesi and Andrea Gabrielli, they formalized in whole light the Hamilton's quaternions. In Lawrence Paulson, also formalized in Isabelle Hall. We have a formalization by Reinhold Affeldt and Cyril Cohen, also regarding Hamilton's quaternions. And in the LeanMathLib, we can find general definitions and results about quaternions in a genetic way. That is the way we formalized in this work. Okay. So,
Who's the author of that?
sorry?
Did you find out the author of that?
If I find...
Did you look at the author of that work?
The author. The author.
Oh, the author, sorry. It was difficult for me to find the authors. It was difficult regarding this formalization about in Lean, because Lean has a collaborative group. So I could find formalizations in MathLib 3, MathLib 4, but I couldn't find a specific author. Because of that, sorry, I
This
I
is
hope that
general
I not.
from the generic point of view,
Yeah.
and geographic abstract point of view, but it's not a very well developed. It's basic. More definitions than Lorenzo. This is the general approach.
Perhaps the commit history will just tell you the author.
Yeah. But it would be nice to see that. Sorry, it's because I couldn't find a specific reference or specific authors. I googled about, I searched about quaternions on Lean, and I found some results, but I couldn't find the specific authors. Because of that, I helped. But if you could help me.
I guess I'm just saying the GitHub history might tell you. So the GitHub history might tell the GitHub.
Okay. So thank you. I will add this information here.
Yes.
But it's a general phenomenon, yes, of authorship. You know, we are a little bit back in the Middle Age. So, you know, anonymous authors. And if we want to avoid that, we should probably
Document.
for instance, Lean, you know, I mean,
it's not ready for the document.
I mean, looking at the Git, and you know, it's not the most natural thing to do. I mean, in the past, I mean, maybe you think it is. I don't know.
Different communities are evolving different practices.
No, but you see, I mean, here you have like papers, no? Are there papers or yeah?
Yes.
So papers are designed to be, you know, to have an author. Anyway,
Metadata.
yes, they have the metadata. Yes. Anyway, sorry.
Okay.
This one from the third one was interesting because we didn't know that this deal with quaternions. No? You don't see any.
You don't see it in the robot.
But they really implemented Hamilton.
Oh, really? Okay.
And
How did you find? Okay, we can discuss that. Yeah, carry on.
Reviewers.
Reviewers. Yes. So reviewers are not robots. Good.
So,
Nice.
here we have some aspects of our formalization. So we define quaternions in a theory that has an interpreted type, sum and multiplication over the elements of this type, and constants 0, 1, and A and B. And we put some axioms like, okay, the square I is equal to this constant, but this constant is generated by this constant because this AQ is in this element. And the square of J is PQ, and axioms like this are other axioms regarding modules or vector spaces. And we consider, for example, that this multiplication, I don't put it, but this is the multiplication for quaternions. And the distributive law holds regarding multiplication and sum. Also, this multiplication is associative, and this one key has a hold of the identity for multiplication. And we were able to prove several results like that. A characterization of the product that sometimes we assume it as an axiom, but we could prove by that consideration, by that axioms. And lemmas like, okay, we can characterize quaternions as a division ring. So a quaternion over a field is a division ring if and only if the equation A square of x plus b square of y equal to 1 is not satisfied. And other results. And again, using this general formalization and instantiating it with the real numbers, the field of real numbers, we could prove the completeness of rotation using quaternions. That if you consider two quaternions, which real part is 0, reach the same norm. So there is a quaternion such that B can be reached by A using that linear function. Well, conclusions and work in progress. So conclusions, okay, we formalized several abstract theorems in PVS, and the approach was we consider general cases and instantiate with adequate concrete structures to obtain well-known results. As future work, we would like to formalize things, more things about things like the ring of polynomials and fields, starting by finite fields. And another important point to explore is about the automation of PVS strategies for abstract structures, because we have in PVS a package called Manip, which deal with equations over real numbers and over vectors of dimension until 4, considering real numbers, where we can we have several commands to add things in both sides of the equation, cancel things. But when we are working with abstract structures, we don't have it in PVS yet. So it would be very nice to provide strategies to enrich the automation of PVS and simplify our proofs for using the properties we have for fields and rings, and to deal better with equations of these abstract structures. And work in progress, we are also formalizing the Lagrange four-square theorem. So theorem basically says that if you have a positive integer number, so there are 4 non-negative integers such that x is the sum of these 4 squares. So we can prove it using quaternions. So this is another application where we have a quaternion different from Hamilton's quaternions, because we have to use these Hurwitz rings, which are quaternions of these 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, oh, sorry. Here is this one. Here we have parentheses, another parenthesis. Okay. So we can prove some things like, okay, the norm of these kind of elements are integer numbers. We can prove to, here we have some steps of the proofs I highlighted. The green ones we have already completed. So we prove, for example, Lagrange identity that says if you consider the sum of 2 squares and multiply by the sum of another 4 squares, so we have the sum of 4 squares. We can use it using properties of norm of quaternions. We define the Hurwitz rings. We have to provide a left division algorithm for the Hurwitz rings. Unfortunately, we can't use that one you formalized because Hurwitz rings, they are not Euclidean domains. So we have to use properties that this Hurwitz ring, the coefficient by a specific ideal is not a division ring. Oh, this proof is in Herstein book. So in this step, for example, Herstein suggested to use the Wedderburn theorem, but we realized that we can use this lemma we have already formalized. And for a P prime, we can prove that this P is the norm of some element in the curved string. And because a prime is the norm of some element of the curved string, so this prime is written as a sum of four squares, and we can use the composition of any positive number in prime numbers to obtain the Lagrange first criteria. So this is a work we are doing. So that's it. That's it. Thank you. I forget.